Social and moral conditions. The Byzantine Empire. Crushed under vexatious and burdensome taxes levied by the Byzantine Empire, the allegiance to any alien ruler was considered by the populace as less oppressive than the rule of Byzantium. Insurrections and revolts had become such a common feature that in 532 AD, the public voiced its discontent most dramatically in Constantinople by the Nika, win or conquer, revolt which took a toll of 30,000 lives. The only diversion of the chiefs and nobles was to squeeze wealth, on different pretexts, from the harassed peasantry, and squander it on their pleasure and amusement. Their craze for merriment and revelry very often reached the depths of hideous savagery. The authors of civilization, past and present, have painted a lurid picture of the contradictory passions of the Byzantine society for religious experience as well as its love for sports and recreation marked by moral corruption. Byzantine social life was marked by tremendous contrasts. The religious attitude was deeply ingrained in the popular mind. Asceticism and monasticism were widespread throughout the empire, and to an extraordinary degree even the most commonplace individual seemed to take a vital interest in the deepest theological discussions, while all the people were much affected by a religious mysticism in their daily life. But, in contrast, the same people were exceptionally fond of all types of amusements. The great hippodrome, accommodating 80,000 wide-eyed spectators, was the scene of hotly disputed chariot races which split the entire populace into rival factions of blue and a green. The Byzantine people possessed both a love of beauty and a streak of cruelty and viciousness. Their sports were often bloody and sadistic, their tortures horrible, and their aristocratic lives were a mixture of luxury, intrigue, and studied vices. Egypt had vast resources of corn and shipping on which Constantinople largely depended for its prosperity, but the whole machinery of the imperial government in that province was directed to the sole purpose of squeezing profits from the ruled for the benefit of the rulers. In religious matters, too, the policy of suppressing the Jacobite heresy was pursued relentlessly. In short, Egypt was like a milking cow whose masters were only interested in sucking her milk without providing any fodder to her. Syria, another fair dominion of the Byzantine Empire, was always treated as a hunting ground for the imperiousness and expansionist policy of the imperial government. Syrians were treated as slaves, at the mercy of their master, for they could never pretend to have any claim to a kind or considerate behavior upon their rulers. The taxes levied upon them were so excessive in amount and so unjust in incidence that the Syrians had very often to sell their children for clearing the government dues. Unwarranted persecution, confiscation of property, enslavement and impressed labor were some of the common features of the Byzantine rule. The Persian Empire. Zoroastrianism is the oldest religion of Iran. Zarathustra, the founder of Zoroastrianism, lived probably about 600 to 650 BC. The Persian Empire, after it had shaken off the Hellenistic influence, was larger in size and greater in wealth and splendor than the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire. Ardashir the architect of Sasanian dynasty, laid the foundation of his kingdom by defeating Artabanus V in 224 AD. In its heyday of glory, the Sassanid Empire extended over Assyria, Khuzestan, Media, Fars, Persia, Azerbaijan at Tabaristan, Mazandaran, Saraksh, Marjan, Marv, Balkh, Bactria, Saft, Sagdonia, Sajistan, Sistine, Hirat, Khorasan, Khwarizm, Khiva, Iraq and Yemen, and, for a time, had under its control the areas lying near the delta of the river Sind, Kutch, Kathiawar, Malwa and few other districts. Ctesiphon, Madian, the capital of the Sassanids, combined a number of cities on either banks of the Tigris. During the 5th century and thereafter the Sassanid Empire was known for its magnificence and splendor, cultural refinement and the life of ease and rounds of pleasure enjoyed by its nobility. Zoroastrianism was founded, from the earliest times, on the concept of universal struggle between the Ahuras and the Devas, the forces of the good and the evil. In the 3rd century Mani appeared on the scene as a reformer of Zoroastrianism. Sapir I, 240–271, at first embraced the precepts uttered by the innovator, remained faithful to them for 10 years and then returned to Mazdaism. The Manichaeism was based on a most thorough-going dualism of the two conflicting souls in man, one good and the other bad. In order, therefore, to get rid of the latter, preached Mani, one should practice strict asceticism and abstain from women. Mani spent a number of years in exile and returned to Iran after the accession of Bahramai to the throne, but was arrested, convicted of heresy, and beheaded. His converts must have remained faithful to his teachings, for we know that Manichaeism continued to influence Iranian thought and society for a long time even after the death of Mani. Iran Ba, Ahdi Sasanian, pages 233-269. Mazdak, the son of Baghdad, was born at Nishapur in the 5th century. He also believed in the twin principle of light and darkness, but in order to put down the vile emanating from darkness, he preached community of women and goods, which all men should share equally, as they do water, fire, and wind. Mazdakites soon gained enough influence, thanks to the support of Emperor Kavad, to cause a communistic upheaval in the country. The rowdy element got liberty to take forcible possession of wives and property of other citizens. In an ancient manuscript known as Nama Tinsar, the ravages done to the Iranian society by the application of the communistic version of Mazdaism have been graphically depicted as under. Chastity and manners were cast to the dogs. They came to the fore who had neither nobility nor character, nor acted uprightly, nor had any ancestral property, utterly indifferent to their families and the nation. They had no trade or calling, and being completely heartless they were ever willing to get into mischief, to mince the truth, vilify and malign others, for this was the only profession they knew for achieving wealth and fame. Arthur Christensen concludes in Iran under the Sassanids. The result was that the peasants rose into revolt in many places, bandits started breaking into the houses of nobles to prey upon their property and to abduct their womenfolk. Gangsters took over the possession of landed estates, and gradually the agricultural holdings became depopulated since the new owners knew nothing about the cultivation of land. Iran Ba, Ahdi p. 4 Ancient Iran had always had a strange proclivity to subscribe to the extremist calls and radical movements, since it has ever been under the influence of irreconcilable political and religious concepts. It has often been swinging as if by action and reaction, between Epicureanism and strict celibacy, and at others, either yielded passively to despotic feudalism and kingship and preposterous priesthood, or drifted to the other extreme of unruly and licentious communism, but has always missed that moderate, poised and even temper which is so vital for a healthy and wholesome society. Towards the end of the Sasanian Empire during the 6th century, all civil and military power was concentrated in the hands of the emperors, who were alienated from the people by an impassable barrier. They regarded themselves as the descendants of celestial gods. Khosrow Parviz or Khosrows II had lavished upon himself this grandiose surname, the immortal soul among the gods and peerless God among human beings. Glorious is whose name, dawning with the sunrise and light of the dark-eyed night. Iran Ba, Ahdi p. 604. The entire wealth of the country and its resources belonged to the emperor. The kings, grandees and nobles were obsessed with amassing wealth and treasure, costly gems and curios, were interested only in raising their own standard of living and luxuriating in mirth and merriment to an extent that it is now difficult for us to understand their craze for fun and festivity. He can alone visualize their dizzy rounds of riotous living who has studied the history, literature and poetry of the ancient Iran and is also well informed about the splendor of Ctesiphon, Iwan-I Kisra and Bahar-I Kisra, tiara of the emperors, the awe-striking court ceremonials, the number of queens and concubines, slaves, cooks and bearers, pet birds and beasts owned by the emperors and their trainers and all. The life of ease and comfort led by the kings and nobles of Persia can be judged from the way Yazdegerd III fled from Ctesiphon after its capture by the Arabs. He had with him, during his flight, 1,000 cooks, 1,000 singers and musicians, and 1,000 trainers of leopards and 1,000. www.islamhouse.com. 16. Attendants of eagles besides innumerable parasites and hangers-on, but the emperor still felt miserable for not having enough of them to enliven his drooping spirits. The common people were, on the other hand, extremely poor and in great distress. The uncertainty of the tariff on which each man had to pay various taxes gave a pretext to the collectors of taxes for exorbitant exactions. Impressed labor, burdensome levies and conscription in the army as footmen, without the inducement of pay or any other reward, had compelled a large number of peasants to give up their fields and take refuge in the service of temples or monasteries. In their bloody wars with the Byzantines, which seemed to be never-ending and without any interest or profit to the common man, the Persian kings had been plying their subjects as a cannon fodder.